Did you wonder if everything that is happening in the world was already announced a long time ago? The problems between countries, the technology that advances faster every day, the persecution of Christians, and the conflicts in the Middle East seem to have no connection. But when we see them in the light of the Bible, things start to fit like a puzzle. The Bible, in the book of Daniel and the Apocalypse, spoke of events that would occur in the last days. Divided kingdoms that cannot come together. The knowledge is growing in an amazing way, and a world is facing unprecedented crises. Is it possible that these prophecies are describing what we are living today? Let's open our eyes together to discover if we are living the fulfillment of the words of the Bible. Prophecy number 1. Global kingdoms and fragile divisions. In the book of Daniel 2:41-43, the prophet explains the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar, saying, "The feet and the fingers that you saw, in part of clay made of clay and in part of iron, mean that it will be a divided kingdom, but there will be in it some of the strength of iron. Just as you saw iron mixed with clay, they will merge through human alliances, but they will not merge one with the other, as iron does not merge with clay." Daniel is talking about a kingdom that will be strong in some aspects like iron, but fragile and weak in others like clay. Even if they try to work together, they will never be able to truly merge, as if iron and clay could not merge. How do we see this today? If we think about the European Union, we can understand what Daniel describes. On the one hand, there are very strong countries like Germany and France, which lead economically and have a great influence. But on the other hand, there are weaker countries like Greece and Portugal, which have gone through huge economic crises and have needed a lot of help from other countries to survive. This makes the union between these nations very unequal. At first glance, it seems that they are together. But in reality, each country continues to fight for its own interests, and that makes the union fragile, as if it could break at any moment. Something similar happens with alliances like NATO, where countries unite with the idea of protecting each other. But within this alliance, there are many disagreements, such as the conflicts between the United States and Turkey, which make this union not as strong as it seems. The same happens with global organizations such as the UN. Their goal is that countries work together to solve important problems, such as climate change, wars, and poverty. But in reality, many countries fail to reach an agreement because everyone has different interests. This makes the organization seem strong on the outside, but on the inside it is weak, like what Daniel said about iron and clay. Daniel wrote these words thousands of years ago, but seeing today's world, it seems that he described exactly what we are living. Although countries try to unite, cultural, economic, and political differences make these unions fragile, as if they were about to break. If what Daniel said is true, maybe we are seeing the fulfillment of his prophecy at this very moment. We have to reflect. ¿Qué nos está diciendo este mensaje sobre el futuro del mundo y la fragilidad de las alianzas humanas? Profecía número 2. Aceleración del conocimiento y viajes masivos. En el libro de Daniel 12:4 se nos dice, la ciencia montará, y muchos correrán de aquí para allá. Este mensaje parece hablar de un tiempo en el que el conocimiento crecería de manera extraordinaria, ¿verdad? Thanks to the digital revolution, anyone with access to the internet can learn almost anything in an instant. Gigantic databases, artificial intelligence, social networks, and technologies such as quantum computing have made information available to everyone. Never before in history had we had so much knowledge available so quickly. Artificial intelligence, for example, can analyze massive amounts of information in seconds, something that before would have taken years. This has transformed the way we work, learn, and solve problems. Isn't this what Daniel predicted when he said that science will increase? On the other hand, the world has become smaller in terms of distances. Progress in transport has allowed millions of people to travel around the world on a daily basis. Massive international flights, high-speed trains, and even the start of commercial space flights have made it possible for people to travel around the world on a daily basis. They are clear examples of how many run from here to there. In addition, the ease of travel has connected cultures and has changed the way we live. People who would never have left their countries before can now cross continents in a matter of hours. Literally, humanity is in constant motion, something that in ancient times was difficult to imagine. It is amazing how Daniel's words seem to describe our modern world with such precision. The increase in knowledge and the way we travel, they have changed everything, from education to the economy. Prophecy number 3. Intense persecution of Christians. In Daniel 7, chapter 25, it says that the prophet describes the little horn, a figure that symbolizes the Antichrist, saying, "Do. Blessed are you through the Holy Ghost, endure in piety in your faithfulness, who lives for the sake, and the laws will be changed against them." In many parts of the world, this persecution is already a reality. For example, in countries like North Korea and China, Christians face brutal repression. In North Korea, being a Christian can mean imprisonment, forced labor, and even death. In China, churches are constantly monitored by the government, and many are closed. People who practice their faith openly are imprisoned or disappear without explanation. In the Western world, although persecution is not so open, changes in laws and social norms, they have created a hostile environment for Christian principles. For example, expressing points of view based on the Bible on topics such as marriage or gender can lead to censorship, social rejection, and even legal problems. Many recent laws seem designed to change times and laws so that Christian values are marginalized. What Daniel wrote seems to fit perfectly with what is happening today. The opposition against believers and the attempts to modify fundamental principles have reached a global scale. What used to be unthinkable, the censorship of religious ideas or the penalization of biblical principles, has become something common in many countries. The prophecy suggests that this persecution will intensify, which raises profound questions. Are we prepared to defend our faith in a world that seems more and more against us? How can we remain firm in the face of these challenges? To defend our faith in a challenging world, we must know well what we believe, constantly pray and trust in God as our strength. Amen. When we surround ourselves with a community that supports us and lives with love and respect, we can stay strong, knowing that Jesus is always with us. Matthew 28:20. Prophecy number 4. A global government and the system of the Antichrist. The fourth kingdom will be different from all the others. It will devour the whole earth, trample it, and tear it apart. 10 kings will rise from that kingdom, and after them another will arise, different from the first, who will bring down 3 kings. Este reino es tuyo. It would be a global power, unique and with absolute control, something that had never been seen before. In our time, we can observe how the bases for a centralized global system are being formed. For example, the World Economic Forum promotes an initiative called the Great Restart. This proposal seeks for countries to adopt the same economic and political system, with similar rules for everyone. Although it seems to be a solution to global problems such as poverty, well, cambio climático, muchos temen que esto le daría demasiado poder a unas pocas personas o instituciones que podrían tomar decisiones que afecten a todos sin oposición. Another example are the digital currencies controlled by the central banks. These currencies could replace money in cash, which would allow governments and banks to track and control each transaction. This means that if someone does not comply with the established rules or regulations, they could block access to their money. This level of control is very similar to the one described in Apocalypse. And local governments must adapt to their guidelines, losing part of their independence. Daniel's prophecy seems to be describing what we are seeing today, a world that advances towards unification under a single system, with centralized financial and political control. Although it has not yet been concretized completely, the steps towards that global system are clear, and Daniel's words make more sense with each passing day. Prophecy number 5. Global crisis without precedents in the book of Daniel 12. 1. The prophet speaks of a unique time in history, full of anguish as never before. Habrá un tiempo de angustia cual nunca fu. This is the Cuban as young Daniel describe a moment of time. The FEC can also compare a con nada can occur. Read on this in a story, and those who demos and use the moon to enter a vivid moment was more complicated. One of the clearest examples is the COVID-19 pandemic. This event changed the lives of millions of people at the same time. Families lost their loved ones. Hospitals were full and many businesses closed forever. The economy stopped and people had to stay home for months. It was something we had never experienced globally. But it is not the only thing that is happening. We also see conflicts that affect many people, such as the war in Ukraine or the problems in the Middle East. These wars have caused suffering not only in the regions where they occur, but also in other countries, because they affect important things such as food prices and energy. In addition, There is the fear that a larger war may begin, especially with countries that have very dangerous weapons, such as nuclear weapons. Another problem we face is climate change. Temperatures are rising, hurricanes and storms are stronger, and many people have lost their homes to fires, floods or droughts. It seems that nature is also out of control. This is added to the fact that the global economy is also unstable. Basic things like food, transportation, and housing are more expensive than before, and many people are struggling to get to the end of the month. In addition, although technology has helped us a lot, it is also creating problems. For example, the use of computers and networks can be used to do harm, such as stealing information or attacking important systems. All this creates more concern in a world that already seems to be at its limit. We are not only facing physical problems. Many people also feel that the world is changing in other ways. There are more divisions between countries, religions, and ways of thinking. Instead of coming together to solve these problems, it seems that the differences are separating us more. All this makes us think about what Daniel said. This time of anguish seems to be happening right now, because we had never seen so many difficult things happening at the same time before, and affecting so many people around the world. Prophecy number 6. Reconstruction of the temple and the desolate abomination. In the book of Daniel 9:27, the prophet writes about a crucial event in recent times. The verse says, "A pact will be made for 7 years, and in the middle of this time the sacrifices will be stopped, giving rise to the desolate abomination." This passage speaks of a period in which there will be an important agreement, but in the middle of that time something terrible will happen. The sacrifices in the temple will be interrupted, and what Daniel calls the desolate abomination. Although there is currently no temple in Jerusalem, many believe that this passage points to its future reconstruction. The Temple Mount, where once was the Temple of Solomon, is one of the most disputed places in the world. It is currently controlled by Muslims and houses the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but it is also a sacred place for the Jews. Today there are Jews and Christian groups living there, who are actively working to rebuild the temple. Some have already created sacred utensils, like the ones used in the ancient sacrifices, and have even trained priests to be ready when the time comes. These preparations show that there is a real and growing interest in recovering this practice. In addition, the tensions in Israel around the Temple Mount are constant. The confrontations between Jews and Muslims about who has the right to this sacred place occur frequently, and many fear that a major conflict may erupt at any time. If at some point an agreement is reached to allow the reconstruction of the temple, it would be a significant event and a possible sign of the fulfillment of this prophecy. The prophecy also speaks of the coming of the Messiah, of a moment in which something profane will be placed in the temple, stopping the sacrifices and causing a great desolation. Some interpret this as an act of betrayal or sacrilege that will mark a key event in the end times. Although the temple has not yet been rebuilt, the current efforts and tensions in the mountain of the temple could be signs de que estamos acercándonos a este momento. Lo que parece claro es que Jerusalén y en particular el monte del templo sigue siendo el centro de atención para eventos que podrían tener un impacto profético en el futuro cercano. Profecía número 7. Un líder carismático que engana al mundo. In the book of Daniel 8:2-3-25, the prophet describes a figure that will appear in the last days. He says this, "In the last days, when the sinners come to the brink of their evil, a king will rise with a high face, understood in enigmas. His power will be great, but not by his own strength, and promise peace to deceive the nations, causing destruction and betrayal." In the current panorama, we see how many people are looking for global solutions to the problems of the world. Leaders from different parts of the world present striking speeches, talking about world unity to solve problems such as climate change, economic crises, and tensions between nations. Some of these speeches are very inspiring and catch the attention of millions, but they can also be used as a tool for manipulation. These leaders usually present proposals that seem very attractive as quick and definitive solutions to complex problems. For example, the idea of unifying global policies to address challenges such as poverty or the environment may sound good in theory, but it could also open the door for a person or a small group to have immense power over the decisions of the whole world. Daniel's passage mentions that this leader will prosper by his own deception. This makes us think about how people, in times of crisis, they can be easily manipulated by promises of peace or stability. History shows us that, in difficult times, humanity has followed charismatic figures who offered quick solutions, but in the end, led to destruction. Although it has not yet been clearly identified a leader like the one described by Daniel, many people see in the current global leaders, with their discourses of world unity, the possible precursors of this prophetic figure. The promises of solving global problems with a single strategy, or the tendency to concentrate power in few hands, are signs that some interpret as a reflection of what Daniel predicted. What is clear is that the world is looking for a strong leadership that can unite the nations in the midst of so many crises. This prepares the ground for someone with the characteristics described by Daniel. Conflict. Ba. The prophet speaks of a confrontation between a king of the north and a king of the south. With decisive events related to Israel, he says the following. In the time of the end, the king of the south will fight against him, and the king of the north will attack him like a storm, with chariots of war, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade many lands, and it will pass like a flood. This passage describes a series of conflicts that culminate in a significant event on the land of Israel, which plays a central role in the end times. Currently, the Middle East is still one of the most tense regions in the world, and Daniel's words seem to resonate with the current conflicts. The tensions between Israel and Iran are seen by many as a reflection of this prophecy. In several interpretations, the king of the north identifies with powers that could represent Iran or allied countries in that region, while the king of the south could refer to nations or alliances that face them. Iran has made clear its opposition to the existence of Israel and, in recent years, has strengthened its military capacity, including the development of nuclear technology. This has led to a constant state of alert between the two nations, with threats of direct conflict that could have global consequences. On the other hand, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is still an open wound in the region. The dispute over Jerusalem and the Temple Mount is a constant reminder that Israel is at the center of world tensions. At any time, these frictions could escalate into a greater conflict. In addition, external powers such as the United States, Russia, and Turkey are involved in the Middle East issues, aligning themselves with different sides of the conflicts. This complicates the situation even more and reflects the idea of a storm of nations confronting each other, as Daniel describes it. Many scholars of the Bible believe that the conflicts in the Middle East are a partial fulfillment, or the prelude to this prophecy. Current tensions not only affect the countries directly involved, but have the potential to involve many nations. Israel remains the central point, as described in the scriptures, and any major conflict in this region could mark a significant prophetic event. The Middle East has always been a key scenario in biblical prophecies, and the current events seem to follow the pattern that Daniel described. The tensions between Israel, Iran, and other nations could be signs that this prophecy is in the process of being fulfilled. Prophecy number 9. The stone that destroys the kingdoms. In the book of Daniel 2:44-45, the prophet describes a powerful vision of the future, saying, "In the days of these kings, the God of heaven will raise a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be given to another people. This kingdom will crush all those kingdoms and will tear them to pieces, but it will remain forever." Just as you saw that a stone was cut from the mountain, not by hand, and that the iron was crushed, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, Daniel speaks of a stone that destroys the great statue that represents the human kingdoms, symbolizing an eternal kingdom that will be established by God. For Christians, this stone represents Jesus Christ and his eternal kingdom. They believe that this passage prophesies the second coming of Christ, when he will return and will be the king of the world. Para traer juicio a las naciones y establecer un reino que no tendrá fin en el contexto actual los eventos que hemos analizado las crisis globales, los conflictos en el Medio Oriente, los sistemas de poder centralizados, and the persecution of the believers. They are seen by many as signs that the return of Christ is closer than ever. Each of these events seems to fit with the biblical prophecies described in the last times. The stone not only destroys the kingdoms of the statue, but it symbolizes the end of all human governments and corrupt systems. This reflects a hopeful promise that one day will be fulfilled. All injustice, suffering, and division will end, and it will be replaced by a kingdom of justice, peace, and truth. Although this kingdom has not yet been established, many Christians see in the current difficulties a call to prepare spiritually. This message of Daniel not only speaks of destruction, but also of redemption and restoration. It is a reminder that, although the human kingdoms are powerful, none will last forever. Only the kingdom of God will be eternal. The current global events, combined with the fulfillment of other prophecies, are interpreted by many as a confirmation that we are approaching this final stage. The stone that destroys kingdoms is an image of hope for those who await the return of Christ and the promise of a new beginning. Throughout this video, we have explored some of the most shocking prophecies in Daniel's book and how many of them seem to be reflected in the world we live in today. From divided kingdoms to global crises and the hope of an eternal kingdom, this video is a reflection of the future and the future that may be coming. What remains to be explained is that Daniel's words, written thousands of years ago, remain relevant and show us that there is meaning in the events that surround us. And now in